In this video, I'm going to show you how do you connect PySpark with SQL Server. So this is the official documentation, and I will post this link in the description. But if for instance, if this page gets lost, if Microsoft decides to redact it from its website, so you have to search it manually. But anyhow, let's begin. So I'll give you a brief introduction about the environment which I have over here. So I have VirtualBox. In VirtualBox, I have two virtual machines. First one is Windows, where we have the SQL Server database, and the other one is Ubuntu, where we are going to perform some tasks using PySpark and Python. So in Windows, I have my SSMS over here, and of course we have the SQL Server in the background. And I have configured this in such a way that the SQL accepts connections from the outside, basically remote connections. And I've created a user in the SQL Server, and the name of that user is remote_connector. Also, there is a test database with which we are going to play with, and so currently this database looks something like this. So if you are going to query this from within SQL, so it is going to give you this result. And once we have to, the task is to connect to this database using Ubuntu. So I'm trying to replicate a scenario where you do not have a server on your machine, and it's on cloud or somewhere else, and you just have a JDBC URL and login credentials, and you have to access it using that. Also, we have the Ubuntu VM, and we have our Anaconda installed, Anaconda 3 installed. So I tried to do this using Anaconda because it was more convenient. So let us try to launch Anaconda Navigator, and I'm going to show you what all packages I have installed. We can also achieve this using native Python libraries, just sudo apt install Python and create an environment, slap PySpark over it, and it's done. But Anaconda gives me more control over packages, and it looks slightly more convenient. So Conda activate base and Anaconda Navigator. So it is going to launch. Meanwhile, in Windows, we have configured Windows in such a way that we have we have exposed a port number 1433 to allow inbound connections to this Windows virtual machine. And if you see, this is SQL Server allow remote. So this is the 1433. This is the port with which is exposed. So Windows accepts connections on this port, and this port is also exposed in SQL Server configurator. I think that's the name of the application. Let me just, SQL Server Configuration Manager. So this thing also has that port exposed. You can do this using this option over here, and it is pretty straightforward, nothing that big. So this is the small configuration I have done over here, and in SSMS also you have to do a similar kind of a configuration. I hope you will be able to find it. If you cannot do that, you can of course post it in the comment section. I'll try to help you out. So anyhow, we have a user, we have password, we have allowed our connection to the SQL Server. So within the VM network, if you go to this IP address 10.0.2.5 and pass the username and password, it is going to give you access to this database. Now coming back to Anaconda, I have created a new virtual environment, and it is called Data Science and Engineering. And within this virtual environment, we have to install a couple of packages. First one is the OpenJDK. It's a package which gives you the JetBrains runtime OpenJDK build, as its description is concerned. And the other one is PySpark, of course. So we have these two packages installed over here. So let us now use it. So I have VS Code. That's my go-to editor. Let's just remove this. We do not need this one. Move to trash. So I have actually written this code for you guys. So I will put this notebook into the description. I'll upload it for you guys. So these are the libraries and these are library imports. So it is standard PySpark SQL Spark session row and all the functions which we have. Then the types, and we have created a Spark session and stored that Spark session in a variable to test whether we have everything running and it's working correctly. So I have written this small piece of code and I'm creating two data frames. So one for the first data frame is using a list of row class, and the other data frame is using a list of tuples, and I have a separate list which gives me the column definition. And after that I'm also this was just to check whether everything is working. So I am using PyODBC connector to fetch that table again and get those results over here, just to check, okay, if my Ubuntu VM is communicating with that database. And this is the heart of the video basically. This is that code which gives you a data frame which converts the SQL table into a PySpark data frame. So this is that code. Now you need to install a library in order to achieve this functionality, because PySpark unfortunately by default does not have a driver. So you have to install it. So as per the Microsoft documentation, there is a driver which you need to install, and there is going to be a similar kind of implementation for Windows as well. But currently we are using Ubuntu, so we are going to stick with Ubuntu. We're going to stick with the Linux configuration, and that is the reason I kind of used Anaconda, so that you can also replicate this functionality if you install Anaconda on Windows machine. So let's go to the Git repository which these guys have given us, and here you will see releases, and in releases you have to download this file. This is the Apache Spark SQL connector.jar. It is the driver basically. That's what you need for this one. And then you need to go to your Spark directory and put that driver over there. Now the question is, how do you find the Spark directory? How do you find that location where your Spark is installed? So a go-to tool is to use a library in Python, and the name of that library is find Spark. It is a standard Spark finding library, if I have to put that. So there are 3 lines of code basically. The first one is find spark.init, possibly it's initialize, and find spark.load. Find spark.find, not load. Find spark.find. If you execute this block, let me run the notebook. So it is going to give you this location where your Spark is located. What we have to do, we need to access this location and try to figure out where to put that jar file. So I already have the jar file downloaded in this machine. So this is that jar file. Yeah. So you need to take this and put it in that location from where Spark is going to use that. Now let's go to that location and try to figure out what we have to do. So it is Anaconda 3 environments. This is the environment which we had created in Anaconda. Then we have lib folder. Yeah. And in lib folder we have Python 3.10. Python 3.10. Yeah, on the same note, make sure you have Python versions lesser than or equal to Python 3.10 and greater than and equal to Python 3.7, because in official Spark 3.3 documentation it says you can use Python versions above 3.7 or 3.7, but if you try to do the similar thing on Python 3.11, it is not going to work. So if I change my environment to Python 3.11, you might get an error. So I was getting an error, so I thought I should notify you guys, but this is just an FYI. You might or may not get an error if you use Python 3.11. But for now, 3.10.9 is working perfectly. So this is that location, and in Python 3.10 you need to go to site packages and PySpark. Where are site packages? Site packages, PySpark. So this is the PySpark folder. That's where our Anaconda navigator has installed PySpark. In this, you are going to find this jars folder. So here you need to put that library which we downloaded from Microsoft's repository in GitHub. So Apache Spark SQL connector.jar 1.3 MB and Apache Spark. Yeah, here it is. 1.3 MB Apache Spark SQL connector. So this library is over there, and once you do this, this Spark is automatically going to recognize this. Make sure you reload your Visual Studio after you do that, because it may or may not give you an error. Now, if we run the code, we are going to see. So here we have created the Spark session, and here, as I mentioned, that we have some test code, and PyODBC. I don't think you require it for this tutorial, but I have just added to test my connection. So here is the code. Here is our SQL Server. We have the IP address and the port, then the name of the database and the user, the table name. Then you have this data frame configuration. We are setting few things over here. We are telling that the format should be JDBC and the option should be this one. And once you execute this, it is going to give you a data frame, and the count of the data frame I'm printing. So it is 17 rows. And here also in our machine, we have 17 rows. So let us try to make a few changes in the table. Let us try to add a few rows in this table. So let's put some garbage information over here and save it. Why, what's happening? Why is it giving an error? Okay, it actually saved it. So as you can see, we have 22 rows now, and if we execute that thing in our Ubuntu machine, it is going to give you 22 rows, and only 20 were fetched because that is the limit of the show function. But if I make it 40, if I make the limit 40, then it will fetch the full table. So it has all the records, and it has printed out the count for us. And likewise, our ODBC fetch all function has also fetched this information, 22. So I think we are done with this one. So if you followed all the steps correctly, you have actually achieved connecting PySpark with SQL Server database. If you have any questions, you can post them in the comment section, and I will be able to help you if it falls under my if I know about it, basically. So thank you for watching the video. Have a nice day. Bye.